The movie opens with an angel named Gabriel, whose job is to save people from crashing while they're texting and driving. He wanders the streets looking for people in cars and lost in their phones, then touches their shoulders, stopping accidents just seconds before impact. During this, he comes across an Indian-American guy named Arj, who aspires to become a documentary filmmaker but hasn't had any opportunities and spends his time doing menial jobs just to survive. He is on the verge of giving up his life because of the hardship, and this deeply worries Gabriel. Later, Arj arrives at a popular bakery, and it turns out he's here to wait in line for someone else. 2 hours pass like this, and a staff member announces that all the buns are gone, which leaves Arj upset as he just wasted his time for nothing. Just then, a rich guy named Jeff arrives, and the staff easily hands over the buns, as it turns out Jeff is one of their investors, which deeply frustrates Arj. He then spends the rest of his day performing a variety of low-level jobs through an app called Task Sergeant, and all of this is observed by Gabriel. Later, we see Arj working at a hardware store where a woman named Elena approaches him asking if he's happy with his work environment. Arj says no, and Elena invites him to join her union, which fights to improve labor conditions. But Arj considers this a waste of time and believes nothing ever changes, and this really upsets Elena. That evening, Arj arrives at a roadside taco stall where he once again comes across Elena and begins chatting with her. They decide to eat together, during which Arj opens up and shares his goal of becoming a documentary filmmaker. They get along very well, and Gabriel is surprised to see them together. As it turns out, he is already well familiar with Elena and is supposed to help her in a few days. Afterward, we see that Arj doesn't have a home, so he arrives at a parking lot and gets ready to sleep in his car. The next day, all the angels gather for a meeting, and we see how each of them has their specific department based on their ranks. The highest rank is an angel named Azrael, who helps lost souls and inspires them to continue living. Gabriel is inspired by him, and later, he speaks with another superior angel, Martha, saying that he also wants to save a lost soul and asks for a more significant position, but she tells him to stick with the texting and driving department while also reminding him of his upcoming assignment to save Elena. However, instead of focusing on his job, Gabriel continues observing Arj, whose life is more difficult than ever. One day, he arrives at a luxurious mansion to clean a garage, and it turns out the place belongs to none other than the tech millionaire, Jeff. Arj does a very good job, which impresses Jeff, so Arj asks if he needs an assistant and offers to work for him. Jeff isn't sure, so he agrees to give him a 1-week trial period, and if Arj impresses him, he will hire him permanently. In the following days, Arj works very hard and performs all the jobs efficiently, which ends up impressing Jeff so much that he makes him his permanent assistant. He also gives Arj a corporate credit card only for business expenses, and because of this new job, Arj is finally able to get a motel room to sleep. One day, Arj and Elena are about to go on a date, but she informs him that she has had a minor accident and suggests postponing their date for the next day. It turns out this is the same accident that Gabriel was supposed to prevent, but he was so busy watching Arj that he failed to do his job. The next day, at work, Jeff shows Arj some hidden guns at his home, which he has kept for emergencies in case someone intrudes. During the conversation, Arj reveals that he's going on a date at a taco place, but Jeff suggests another restaurant and claims it's not too expensive. He even gives Arj a fancy jacket, which makes the latter very happy. Later, Arj and Elena arrive at the restaurant, where they end up having a good time, but when it's time to pay the bill, it turns out to be too expensive. Elena suggests splitting the bill, but Arj doesn't want to create a bad impression, so he ends up paying using his corporate card. The next day, Jeff confronts him about the money he spent on personal expenses, so Arj apologizes and explains what happened. He promises to pay back all the money, but Jeff feels like his trust has been violated and ends up firing Arj. This leaves Arj very frustrated, and he tries to look for menial jobs on Task Sergeant, but it's fully booked. With nothing else, he goes to donate plasma, and afterward, he passes out due to weakness. When he wakes up, he is stunned to see that his car has been towed away, and now he has to pay a lot of money to get it back. Upon seeing this, Gabriel can no longer stand by and finally appears in front of Arj and introduces himself. He tries to convince Arj that his life is worth living, but Arj doesn't think so and wants to end everything. So Gabriel shows him his future, in which Arj is seen doing another minimum wage job and living in Elena's parents' house with several other people. The couple then moves to another state, but they have to put down their dog because they cannot afford its surgery. A naive Gabriel thinks it will cheer up Arj, but he only becomes more frustrated and doesn't want to live for such a future. Arj says only people like Jeff deserve to live, but Gabriel tries to convince him that even the rich can be miserable, which Arj doesn't believe. So Gabriel decides to prove it to him, and moments later, Arj wakes up inside an expensive car, which leaves him shocked. The automatic car then drives him home, and shockingly, he ends up arriving at Jeff's house. Even more bizarre is that Jeff is now looking very poor, and it turns out he works as an assistant to Arj, who is now a millionaire. This thrills Arj, and Gabriel asks if he likes this life. Arj excitedly says yes, but Gabriel thinks Arj will change his mind after seeing the downside of being rich, and says he will return in a week to assess the situation. Following this, Arj immediately begins spending a ton of money and enjoys all the luxuries in the world. One day, he meets Elena, who doesn't know him, so he reintroduces himself, and they get along very well. They visit the same expensive restaurant, and things are going much better than before, prompting them to kiss. After 1 week passes, Gabriel arrives to meet Arj again and asks if he has seen the downsides of being rich and wants to go back to his former life. But Arj is happier than ever and refuses to go back again, and it turns out Gabriel can't switch him back without his consent. This leaves Gabriel very worried, so he informs Martha about this, who scolds him for overstepping his boundaries. She states that he was supposed to help Elena, but didn't, which caused Arj's date to get cancelled and led to a chain of events that ended with him getting fired. She now takes Gabriel's wings and tells him that he needs to convince Arj to return to his life. Later, Gabriel approaches Arj again, who is having a huge party at the mansion, and it turns out that since his wings are gone, now other people can see Gabriel as well. The angel tries to convince Arj to return, but to no avail, and just then, we see Jeff serving drinks to the partygoers. Gabriel then touches him, and all of a sudden, Jeff regains memories of his former life and asks what the hell is going on and why he is in poor clothes while Arj is wearing his clothes. He is so shocked by the whole ordeal that he ends up unconscious. When Jeff wakes up, he begins arguing with Arj and demands that he wants his life back. Even Gabriel tries to convince Arj, reminding him he's not that kind of person to steal someone's life. In the end, Arj reluctantly agrees to return, but before that he asks for a few days so he can have some fun. The other two agree, and since Gabriel has now lost his wings, he decides to move in with Jeff. They spend the night at a motel, but the next morning the staff ask them to check out or pay more. With no other choice, Jeff starts working menial jobs via Task Sergeant app and ends up struggling a lot. Most people treat him poorly, and even after working all day, he learns that he won't get paid until the end of the week. With no other choice, he resorts to sleeping in the car alongside Gabriel, and Jeff finally understands what it is like to be poor. Elsewhere, we see Arj chilling with Elena and inviting her to Paris this weekend, as he doesn't have much time in this life. But she refuses, saying she has a union meeting this weekend, so Arj considers the union thing a waste of time and calls her out for refusing a trip to Paris for that. An upset Elena understands that their lives are too different and walks out. The next day, Arj is driving when he tries to text Elena to apologize, but during this, he ends up in an accident. Later, Gabriel informs Jeff that Arj has gotten into an accident and is in a coma, which means Jeff is still stuck here as a poor man. Jeff is furious and demands that Gabriel talk to the other angels, so Gabriel agrees and approaches Martha, but she says she cannot help him and tells Gabriel he will now become an ordinary mortal as a punishment. She says Gabriel will only be an angel when Arj returns to his former life filled with hope. Following this, Gabriel begins to experience human sensations such as hunger and eats for the first time in his life. 3 weeks pass like this, and Jeff is struggling to provide for both of them, so he asks Gabriel to look for a job. Gabriel ends up working as a dishwasher, but he earns very little and is frustrated to learn that most of his salary goes to taxes. One day, Jeff has to deliver food to his former mansion, where he notices that Arj has woken up from his coma. He demands his life back, but Arj isn't ready to be poor again, so he fakes amnesia and pretends not to recognize him. Later, a frustrated Jeff passes this news to Gabriel, who is so stressed that he has become addicted to smoking. Gabriel recalls how his original job was to help Elena and thinks maybe if he can direct her to the right path, this might influence Arj to change his mind. The next day, we see Elena at her union meeting, where Gabriel also arrives and supports her, but people realize he doesn't work there and kick him out. Then a vote takes place in the hardware store, where the majority of people are against the union, so Elena ends up losing. That evening, Gabriel gets drunk in frustration when his colleague finds him and invites him for some fun. They move to a club where Gabriel sees a woman he had once saved from being in an accident. He realizes that his work was crucial and made a difference in people's lives, which makes him feel better. Elsewhere, Jeff ends up losing his job as a delivery man. As it turns out, deliveries are now done by robots, which puts him in an even more dire situation. He then suddenly recalls how he had an expensive collection of watches in his mansion, so he decides to steal them and shares the plan with Gabriel. Days later, Jeff and Gabriel sneak into the mansion where Arj has hosted his huge birthday party. We then see Elena working as a waitress at the party, and Arj tries to talk to her, but she keeps her distance and tries to be professional. However, after everyone leaves, the two spend some time together, and Elena vents her frustration about how her fight for the union was for nothing, and she feels like giving up. Later, after Arj goes to bed, Jeff approaches his safe and proceeds to steal the expensive watches, but Arj mistakes him for a burglar and ends up shooting him with the same gun that Jeff once gave him access to. He soon recognizes that it's Jeff, who now realizes that Arj was only faking amnesia. Arj apologizes for everything and immediately calls an ambulance for Jeff. The next day at the hospital, Arj says he is ready to go back to his former life, and they wait for the switch to happen. But nothing happens, and Gabriel reveals that Arj only wants to exchange out of guilt, and for the switch to happen, he must truly believe that his life is worth returning to. Jeff believes this rule is nonsense because no one wants to be poor, so Arj suggests they all live together. The three then spend time at the mansion where they enjoy various luxuries and have a lot of fun. That evening, they arrive at the taco place, where they meet Elna, who chats with Arj. She reveals how she has decided not to give up and still fight for the union. She believes that if they stay persistent, things will eventually change for the better, and this also inspires Arj. They all then go to dance at a club, but Gabriel suddenly becomes sad and goes outside, followed by Arj. Gabriel reveals how he feels like a failure for losing his job as an angel, but Arj tells him he can't give up on himself. Gabriel also admits that even though he has struggled a lot in the past few months, he made some good friends and even enjoyed the taste of food, and his favorite one is tacos. At this moment, Arj realizes he can't live someone else's life forever and truly wants to go back to his former life. Gabriel then touches him, after which Arj is suddenly transported back to the same place where he passed out after donating his plasma. He learns that his car was towed away, and elsewhere, Jeff also returns to his former life as a millionaire. The next day, Arj arrives to pick up his car, but learns that Jeff has paid for all his fines. Elsewhere, we see Jeff at his company meeting, where he announces that he is raising the salaries of delivery staff along with additional benefits. He also reveals his decision to shut down the robot delivery system, which has been replacing human workers. In the following days, we see Arj's life going the same way that Gabriel had once shown him, but he is determined to change that, so he quits his job and begins work on a documentary about gig workers. He also reunites with Elena, and they begin developing a romantic relationship. As the movie ends, they arrive at the taco place, but Arj leaves one on a plate before leaving, which is soon grabbed by an invisible Gabriel.